Welcome, everyone, to the Cucina Aurora Kitchen Witchery podcast, another episode of Conversational Witchcraft. And today we have with us, I'm just so excited to talk to him. This is the amazing Raven Digitalis, the author of the Empath's Oracle and the Everyday Empath, Esoteric Empathy, Shadow Magick Compendium, Planetary Spells and Rituals, and Gothcraft. Wow, what a resume. Originally trained in Georgian Witchcraft, Raven has been an earth-based practitioner since 1999, a priest since 2003, a Freemason since 2012, and an empath all his life. He holds a degree in cultural anthropology from the University of Montana, co-operated a nonprofit Pagan Temple for 16 years, and is also a professional tarot reader, DJ, card-carrying magician, and animal rights activist. Hello, Raven. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on. It's so nice to be here and nice to finally meet you.
I know,
in the
right?
Flesh. Well, in the screen.
In the screen, right? In the screen. I feel like, and I like miming. Yeah. I love it. I feel like I have this amazing opportunity to meet people I would never meet because of Zoom and because of the podcast. And like, it's amazing, right? You're in Hawaii.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Kauai Island.
Which is amazing to begin with. And I need to know like how you wound up there.
Right. Here's my University of Hawaii cup. I didn't actually go there. I just found this at the at the Humane Society store. So.
I mean, I'm up here. I'm from New York originally, and now I'm up here in New England. I'm in New Hampshire, and I have never been to Hawaii. I've never been. I'm not much of a beach person. So when I think about vacationing, I don't think about like being on a beach in a bathing suit. That's like my worst nightmare. But if I was going to go somewhere tropical, it would be Hawaii because it's fucking outstanding there, right?
It is highly recommended.
I mean, yeah, you live there.
Yeah, and even for me, Montana Goth boy at that.
Wow.
It's a very strange crossover, I must admit. But
what brought you there?
Burnout and vision. So basically, very long story, made very short. You mentioned that I co-operated a nonprofit pagan Wiccan Hindu temple in Missoula, Montana for 16 years with my priestess there. I also worked at a group home with developmentally disabled adult males for six males for 12 years at the same group home. And with both organizations, both nonprofits, I was approaching kind of a burnout phase. It was just, it was time for a change. All the signs were pointing there. And then when I was on tour for this book, the
Everyday Empath,
which is the kind of for everyone book, I got a vision to move to Kauai, and spirits, whoever, woke me up at 3:30 in the morning and said, "You must move to Kauai specifically." And I did. Everything lined up financially and housing wise and car wise, and everything just lined perfectly up, and I couldn't say no when those synchronicities were. So, and my former priestess and I had visited a couple years prior, so I was kind of familiar already, and we had visited the large Shiva temple and monastery here. So that was part of the reason for going also.
Wow.
But then a week and a half later, COVID lockdown hit, and so there was no getting in, no getting out.
So you were there, and it was like, you're there and now you're here. The end.
Yeah.
Holy crap balls. I mean, that, it's funny, right? Because we're the witches, and then shit like that happens and we're still surprised, right? Like
of course it did.
Of course it did. I mean, but have you since then figured out why you're supposed to be there, or are you still learning?
Oh, a bit of both, but definitely for healing. uh, for getting to learn myself, know myself, just for personal space. It's been a healing journey, and
Yeah.
also a recalibration of what it means to be a healer myself. Big part of the reason. Yeah.
I mean, from what I hear, the land itself in Hawaii is very magical, filled with vibration. I had friends years and years ago. He suffered terrible nerve damage in his back and went to Hawaii. I'm not sure exactly which islands he visited over the course of a couple of months. And he said he literally got off the plane and had no pain. Yeah. And
That happens with the tropical weather.
yeah, I was like, that's insane. And I've heard other people talk about the land specifically and its healing properties, and being there's so much volcanic activity and there's so much ocean activity, and just the geography of it. Is that something that, like, in healing work you've noticed, and how different from Montana? I mean,
Oh yeah.
wow. Like, even mountains in Montana, mountains in Hawaii are completely different.
They are, but then there are some similarities too. It's very interesting. Sometimes I'll notice similarities. I'm like, oh, that is kind of like Montana. Oh wait, there's palm trees now, and never.
And no snow, which is not the worst thing.
That is a big reason too. It's just the snow and the ice in Montana just becoming a little bit much.
A little bit much.
Yeah.
A little bit much, right? Okay, so you're in Hawaii now and you're doing all of your amazing work. And I have to know, like, growing up in Montana, did you grow up witchy? Like, did you always know? You've been an empath your whole life, right? And I think so many people have, I don't want to say are empaths, but feel things that aren't theirs, or they carry around things that aren't theirs, or they're very sensitive to other people's feelings and energies, and maybe don't define as an empath. So at what point did you figure that out about yourself in your journey? And then where in that journey did you find witchcraft?
Well, I discovered witchcraft before empathy, and this was in high school. Had a friend introduce me to, the craft and practical magic, and
Of course.
charmed, yeah. Guilty pleasures. Well,
Yes.
maybe not guilty. They're fabulous. Yeah.
Fabulous.
And then just started doing my own studies and practices, and some group work also with some friends at the time. And I suppose around a year after discovering witchcraft, I began training with Zanoni Silverknife in the Georgian Wiccan tradition, and she passed away last year, blessed be, and so much gratitude to her. And around that time, I also discovered that I was an empath, which of course is a title, just like anything, but titles hold significance, words
and weight
of power.
And power, absolutely.
Weight. Yeah. And that took a nervous breakdown in high school for me to discover that.
Whoa. And you're
rad.
like, what, 16 years old?
16, 17.
Wow. And with, I mean, you could share as much or as little about that experience as you like, but I wonder how does, I mean, I think you hear a lot, especially in the witchcraft community, that there is some sort of a trauma or traumatic event that kind of cracks this open, where we find that path. And this was, you had already been introduced to witchcraft, but this learning about who you were came through this traumatic event. Wow.
Well, yeah. And actually, I would say there were a couple traumatic events that really blew those doors open. And I actually discussed them in my Esoteric Empathy book, which is the witchy one. This is my baby, my number one.
So that's a big one.
Yeah. And there's an empathic anecdote in each that opens each chapter. So it discusses those two incidents. So, we often hear about how psychics, for example, learn about their gifts and hone and develop their gifts because of abuse and traumatic experiences and very, very harsh things that make a person need to be constantly aware of their surroundings.
Yeah.
I'm fortunate to not have been abused, and have a very good family. And the two episodes that blew open my empathic awareness were, well, just the first was just existing in high school one day, just after a few classes, I just was overwhelmed with all this energy and all these emotions, like, and coupled with teenage hormones and emotions, it's like a big ball of crazy. And so I never cut class, but, well, I did a couple of times to smoke weed.
No, who would do that?
And but yeah, I went. I just couldn't take it, and I just walked down to a spiritual elder's house, and she happened to live a few blocks away from the school. And I said, "What is going on with me?" And she says, "Well, honey, you're an empath." And I'm like, "What the fuck's that?" And
right.
She's
right.
And so she tells me what that means, and it's just someone whose empathic receptors are on high.
Yeah.
And truth be told, everybody's an empath to different degrees. Everybody's psychic, different degrees, or medium to different degrees. And we all have these skills and powers. And some people just have certain ones higher on the scale than others. And it's part of the diversity of mystical life,
They're being human.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
And so it's been a journey of discovering that. And honestly, I put off writing about empathy for quite a while, and explored more the Gothic subculture and shadow magic work and things like that. And then eventually Spirit was like, okay, it's time. And I'm serious, you should see the bibliography.
I know, it's ginormous. Yeah, it's amazing.
So, huge bibliography. It's worth it. Worth all 6 years to write.
And a labor of love, obviously, and deeply personal. And I don't know, I mean, I've written books, and it's like fucking therapy to write these, but they're super hard. I don't think people realize, like, you're not just putting out a book about, oh, this is what it means to be an empath, or, oh, these are practices that you could do. It's like, well, let me dig into all my garbage so you understand where I'm coming from. And like, here's all the things that, like, I don't know, for me, I'm like, here's all the things I did wrong. And here are all my experiences. Please don't do them. Do it this way instead. Right. But like, first of all, I think it's amazing that as a teenager, you already had a window into the world of witchcraft and an elder that you could go to. I think that's
3 elders, really.
That's amazing. But they were able to guide you through.
3, 4, 5 different elders. Yeah.
Wow.
Very fortunate.
How did you find them?
Well, my friend Valan Valdison ran a store called Earth Spirit Books in Missoula, and that's how I met Zanoni, Silver Knife, the Wiccan teacher, and then a couple of elders from that community. And what the funny thing, here's another synchronicity. Missoula is a valley like that, and about 70,000 population, maybe more by now. And then Kauai is an island like that. So instead of being all mashed together in a valley, the same population, 70,000 people in Kauai, is all spread out all around the island. It takes 2 hours to drive from tip to tail or more. So it's interesting to have the same population in numbers, but spread out instead of condensed. So everybody kind of knew everybody, and circles always crossed back in Missoula. So that's how I gained friendships and teachers.
I think it's really important, and going back to what you said just before, is that everybody is an empath, everybody is a psychic, everybody is a medium, that we all have this within us. Just like, we all have eyes. Some people have blue eyes, some people have brown eyes, but we all have eyes. In most cases, that is not to people that are blind or happen to be missing an eye, but like there are certain human qualities that we all have, that in their physical bodies and in our emotional bodies that we have, and in our spiritual bodies that we have. And I think it's interesting that you had this experience of finding a word, a name for what you were at such a young age. Because like you said, when you're a teenager, and I think this is probably true for most people, you feel everything 100,000 times bigger and harder than it is, right? It's like every person you have a crush on is the love of your life and you can't live without them, right?
Yeah.
Every song on the radio is your favorite and you love it and it's the best song in the world, right? Like that was me as a teenager. I'm kind of still the same person, but then to add on top of that you happen to be a person that has an amplification on the empathy that you carry in your spiritual self. I imagine that being very hard, and without having a name for it, you could probably think you're going fucking crazy.
And that, reminds me of the other thing that really blew open the empathic doors was an acid trip. And I discussed that also in Esoteric Empathy because I'm an open book and I have no secrets. I have nothing to hide. I'll say it how it is. But
that's really interesting. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Wow, yeah. That's amazing.
I was 16 or 17 again. That was my turning point. And I was just hanging around the wrong crowd, and nothing wrong with LSD. Well, I shouldn't say that. Every drug has its pros risks. And cons.
Yep.
And I look up very much to the work of Baba Ram Dass, who was an LSD mystic in many ways, but not exclusively. But that was he worked with Timothy Leary in early days. But for me, it didn't take well because I was with the wrong people, and it was the spiral that I learned. It was like an initiation through hell. And my friends and I were driving around, stopping at different places, and I could observe the spiral nature of reality and conversations and everything would loop back into me. And then I would absorb it. And it's just crazy how everything just spiral, and would always come back into me. And so I couldn't understand. Like, I knew I was an empath. I just didn't know what to do with that energy. And it was just horrible. It was
terrifying.
Yeah, probably the worst experience of my life. Yeah.
And yet at the same time, it opened up all of this knowledge and like an awareness. And I feel like as you're telling this story, you are in that memory and it is so real for you.
Yeah. But see, now I can take that and learn how to conduct it and project it out. And that's one thing that I'm a Leo, so I'm prone to bragging. Okay. But I also have, Scorpio rising, Pisces moon, so I'm a softie at heart. So I mean, look, just snuggle. Manatee. This is Fish the manatee.
Fish the manatee. Hi, Fish.
This is the second appearance on a podcast.
Is it? Everybody, listen, I have a row full of stuffies in my bedroom. Like, and I won't get, they're like my babies and I kiss them goodnight every night. This is more than the world needs to know about me, but I kiss my stuffed animals and I talk to them and they all have like really ridiculous names. Like I have a snowy owl and I named him Carl, and we get into arguments all the time because he falls off the bed and I'm like, Carl, what the fuck are you doing? Like, really? Okay. Anyway, back to you. And you're amazing.
Called animism. That's called animism. It's okay. Because that's where witchcraft is rooted.
Thank you. I'm also a kitchen witch, and all of my, obviously, I'm a kitchen witch, but like all of my appliances have names and we have
Mhm.
total conversations.
Okay.
So like
Love it. Love it.
Mike is my microwave and he's always yelling at me because I leave things in him. And he's like, hello, you asked me to do this fast and now you're ignoring me. Like we have big conversations. But
I love it.
do you think that experience with substance, because I think that there is, I've never really experimented with substance. It's not my jam. I'm a control freak and it scares the piss out of me, right? Like I don't smoke weed. It scares the piss out of me. So that's just me. Okay. Whatever it is I think I have a past life experience with substance abuse. And I've been like legit afraid of substance since I was a child before I could understand like what it was. Right. So there's this innate kind of but I get it. And whatever, it's cool for everybody. But I wonder if you feel like that experience was what you were seeing was not hallucination, but reality, that a veil was lifted.
It was. That's exactly.
Right. And is that something that you have incorporated into more magical workings as you have grown?
Yep, exactly. That's exactly right. And what I'm going to Leo brag about is that one thing that I write about greatly based on that, the lessons from that experience, that other empathic writers about empathy, whether it's in a metaphysical or psychological, physiological lens, I've not seen elsewhere, is projective empathy, because we always think of empathy as just what I mentioned earlier, just being absorbing, being this emotional sponge, and it's like, fuck, now what? How do I squeeze the sponge? And you can do all these shielding, cleansing, things like that. But I also, and even in my Empath's Oracle deck, I have something related specifically to projective empathy. Thank you. And so this is okay. Empaths, highly empathic people, or everyday people, when their empathic receptors are on high, can take that energy and project it. So now I see large amounts of external emotional energy. Empathy is exclusively emotional. There are not different types of empaths. There are empaths who have different proclivities and things like that and talents, but empathy is empathy. It's emotional. So I see it coming in the left side, and we can project that, transmute that out the right side as an instant act of magic. Say someone's like blah 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 blah. Okay, I'll take that energy on and just instantly visualize it coming out the right side of my body, white light, not holding onto it. So
that's amazing.
Thereby, the empath is not just a sponge; they're a transmuter. They can absorb, transmute.
I never really thought about it that way before. And I think the way, because most of us don't know how to channel that, we do it incorrectly because it has to come out at some point, right? So what I mean by that is you might go, if there are days where maybe you don't have this. I have days where I am particularly sensitive to energy, and then other days where I'm like not. But there are days, if I'm tired, if I haven't done meditation, if I haven't done any shielding, whatever it is, whatever my fucking excuse is. And then I go to the grocery store and this person cuts me off in the parking lot and that person's taking too long behind the cash register and whatever. And if it's just like, when you walk into a space and the vibe is just crap and you take that on and you don't even realize it, but then you get home and you're maybe snippy or bitchy to your partner or you're, whatever. So we are taking it and then we are releasing it, but we're not doing that without the knowledge of it. Is that something that happens often? And how can we how can we be more aware, first of all? And second of all, how can we be more mindful about how we're channeling it out?
And that's, I think you said it right there, mindful, being mindful, mindfulness, and Buddhism talks quite a lot about mindfulness. Out of all the religions or philosophies, Buddhism's more of a philosophy than a religion. Well, I should say it is a philosophy. Buddhism is not a religion. It fits in, it can work for atheists, witches, Christians, anyone, Buddhist philosophy. And I studied that before Hinduism and after witchcraft. But anyway, it is that stepping back and looking at our minds and where we're at. And that can be fucking hard because we can be just in this state where we don't realize that we are co-creating this spiral of people cutting us off, and we are co-creating it. It's not like it's our fault, but
we're participating in it.
Yeah. And it's our reactions that matter, our responses that matter. So it's like, responding rather than reacting. So reacting is more impulsive. It's like, and responding is more like, okay, think about this, process this, and then interact with it. So analyzing mind and where we're at is a big
that's huge. That's huge, right? And listen, let's just address the gorilla in the room. At the time of this recording, the Supreme Court just overruled Roe v. Wade. That feels like, if we're talking about empathy, and I'm talking about empathy on a larger scale, on a human scale, on a societal scale, and I think oftentimes we confuse empathy on that level with sympathy and be like, oh, I'm sad for this person, versus I feel what this person is feeling. And as we're looking at these huge, horrible, terrible things that are happening in our society, whether it is, let's just say human rights, women, people of color, LGBTQ plus community, war and COVID and all these horrible things that have happened in the last couple of years. How do we manage this weight of sadness and fear that we are constantly feeding and pull, I go to my office and it's mostly women, and we're terrified. And so we're feeding off of each other's terror, and we're feeding off of each other's sadness, and yet trying to keep positive, right? On a global level, I would love to hear your thoughts on empathy and how we balance this out and how we can work through it as individuals and as community. I know it's a huge, huge question, but I mean, it's on my mind. So
I guess the first thing that comes to mind, well, my reaction, response, whatever, to hearing that was also very much sadness and just, is this real? Really? What? Which country and century are we living in? How is that even possible? How are you going to tell 13-year-old little Susie, whose dad raped and impregnated her, to go to another state to get an abortion? What? No. And it only made my frustration with that compounded, because kitty.
Sorry.
Hi,
This is Ollivander. Say hi. Hi, Ollie. Say hi, Ollie. That's his belly.
Oh, what a sweetie puss.
You want to lighten the mood? He wants to lighten the mood a little bit. He's like, you're talking about really heavy stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
Come on, go sit down. I apologize.
Hopefully my black cat comes in too.
Yay. I saw you have a black cat because I did a little pre-stalking of you before our interview. Anyway, back to all the heavy shit.
That's almost as flattering as the person who recently cloned my Instagram profile and pretended to be me and added a bunch of followers and tried to con them out of money for fake tarot readings.
I don't know. I don't understand. I like really like I haven't yet to my knowledge, I haven't yet gotten a scammer account. Knock on everything. I'm just not that popular. No one wants to be me. It's just no one wants to be. Anyway, back to the since Ollivander interrupted us. Yeah, I mean, it's the world is terrifying right now. And for people who have a heightened sense of empathy, it's impossible to even figure out what's mine and what's not mine. Like,
yeah. And I was going to say it really compounded the issue when I learned about it. It was at work yesterday at the time of this recording, because I work one-on-one with individuals now with healthcare, as well as everything else I do.
Right.
And a little sleep now and then. But
who needs it?
But he was watching Fox News, and I'm like, and they're like, it's such a great day for all those innocent lives, and I'm like, no, that's not true. That's not reality. And so I was like, okay, just gotta do my job, hold in this stress, and then at the same time cover my crown chakra. So there's some advice, because there's national and global uproar when things like that happen, and when massive acts of violence happen that we can absorb, and we're at risk of absorbing. Everybody is, especially those who are highly empathic. So we need to really project light as much as possible.
Yeah, and I think that because of the global and the societal horrors, you can feel overwhelmed, and then you feel like I can do nothing because I'm an exposed nerve, right? So if you're not protecting yourself and you're not shielding yourself and doing those practices that are, like you said, cover your crown chakra and learn to channel, you're not going to be able to be mentally, spiritually, maybe even physically well enough to take the action that you need to take in the world to effectively change things, like getting out and voting or working in your communities or volunteering and stuff like that. So I think that this conversation is really important, because I feel like at the heart of your spiritual work, and stop me if I'm wrong, okay, that the heart of your spiritual work is emotional well-being.
That's right.
Right?
I go on about balance. Yeah. Emotional balance, emotional well-being. Yeah.
It's so important. And I think oftentimes we get so involved in, I'm going to do this spell, I'm going to write this ritual, the planets are doing this, so I have to do that. And we forget that we are human beings with complex emotion and complex emotional health and complex mental health. And none of that ritual shit that you're doing is going to make a damn difference if your head's not on straight and your heart's not on straight. Would you agree?
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. We start with ourselves. That's just how it goes.
Start with ourselves. Wow.
And if I have, even if I have very little money and I'm trying to make rent, like now, but that will change. If I'm not feeling 100% and I have tarot readings lined up, I will tell those people, I'll say, I'm going to have to reschedule, because ethically I need to be in alignment to properly receive and channel and transmit these readings and messages that you need. I don't want to give you a half-ass reading. You need a whole ass reading. You
got to do it your whole ass, or don't do it at all.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
So, so I'll even do that sometimes. So I think, yeah, high levels of empathy and psychicism and other public services, spiritual or otherwise, require that we be balanced to the best of our abilities. Not at all times. Like, you know, all we can do is the best we can.
In the
And
moment
be
that
honest
you're
with,
in.
yeah, and we have to be honest with ourselves and others as well. Yeah.
I love that so much. I think people forget that honesty starts with the self, right? And your emotional health and the emotional health of relationships that you have starts with how you feel about that relationship, and how you feel is how you communicate. And if how you feel is how you communicate, then you can't be communicating with spirit, because spirit doesn't listen to your bullshit, right? Like spirit's like, no, right? Spirit wakes you up in the middle of the night and goes, you need to move to Kauai.
Yeah.
And if you didn't listen, spirit gonna do something, right? Like shit's gonna go sideways if you don't take those actions. But if you're not clear, you're not you won't listen, you won't hear the message.
Exactly. And using that example, if I had waited 2 weeks to move, as they say in Hawaii, no can, I wouldn't have been able to, because it's all on lockdown. So,
wow. And again, like, you think that we would get that, like, okay, so here, I'll tell you a little bit of a story about my life. My husband and I were both born and raised in New York. And for years and years and years, I wanted to move to New England. Like, since I was a little kid, since the first time I visited Massachusetts and New Hampshire, I was like, I don't know, something in this. I love it here. I'm going to move here when I get older. And we got married, and I was like, one day we're going to live in New England. We're going to leave, and we're going to move to New England. We're going to move to New England. And he was like, yeah, okay. And I kept having these feelings like, we need to go. Things aren't, everything was hard. Everything was so difficult there. And there were a lot of cues and a lot of reasons and a lot of moments where we could have made the decision and we didn't. And then our house burnt down.
Oh no.
No, and it was the worst and the best thing that ever happened to us, because it literally forced us to make a decision. And it made us go, it happened on Imbolc, and we're watching it burn down. And I looked at him and I was like, this is the goddess's way of telling us to pack our shit and get out of here. Like, we have nothing now. We have nothing. We have the clothes on our back and our pets. Like, there's nothing keeping us here. And within almost a year to the date, we moved and we started our life in New England. And because I wasn't listening, I still wound up where I was supposed to be, but I hadn't been listening before. So I needed that wake up moment. So if we are not listening, if we're not receptive to what's going on around us, something's going to wake you the fuck up. And I'm hoping that everything that's going on in the world is that collective wake up moment that we need as a people, because it is it is really hard as empathetic beings to not, who didn't cry when they heard stories of children being, murdered in schools? Who doesn't cry and feel things when you hear about what has happened in Ukraine? And, that, I think that's what people think empathy is, but it's so much more than that, isn't it?
And like you were saying earlier, what is sympathy and what is empathy? I don't have a womb, so I cannot in this lifetime fully empathize with someone who does have a womb or vagina. And so I literally just can't fully empathize. I can sympathize and I can empathize with the emotions that come with things related to that.
Sure.
So that's where kind of there is some difference. So sympathy is feeling for someone or something, and empathy is feeling as someone or something.
Right. Putting your right. And do you feel that empathy, what we were saying before, everyone has empathy, everyone's an empath and everyone's a psychic and all of that, but can empathy also be learned?
I think, like with any skill, it can be brought out. But the thing about empathy is that it comes with compassion. It must come with compassion. And that's something that I learned from the works of Carla McLaren, who writes about empathy. And she said, empathy requires a compassionate response. Otherwise, it's not fully empathy. We might absorb something, but if we don't have a compassionate response, maybe we empathized it, or we absorbed it, but empathy is a full cycle, a full response. A compassionate response is where the true nature of empathy lies. So
it's fine if you feel bad for someone, but
yeah,
act on, act on it. Like you just said, empathy without compassion, it doesn't count. Like that it's not true empathy, right? That compassion for the other individual, whether it is a human or an animal or, a living tree, having compassion and saying, compassion being the understanding of how this hurts or how you're feeling, right? Empathy is feeling, as you put it, how did you put it? Empathy is feeling as that other person, but the compassion is the understanding piece, right? Like not only do I feel what you're feeling, but I understand why you're feeling this. And I think, like on the base level as human beings, isn't that all we want?
Right. And that's why empathy is a force of evolution, and science understands that. Because without empathy, how would we evolve as a species, as a culture? Same with any species, from mycelium underground, fungus underground, to trees, to animals, to humans. How could any of us evolve without empathy, without communication and understanding and that oneness in a way?
Yeah, that's a really good point, because without empathy and compassionate understanding, you have division.
And that brings me actually to mind back to another Buddhist teaching, which is, if we really understand oneness and that we are all connected, why would I go and hurt someone or something? That would just be like, pounding a nail into my finger. It's like in my own finger.
Right. There is no other. There is no other. And our society is so into othering. Right? Like, the women and people of color and LGBTQ and the Christian right and the radical left, and them versus us and you versus me, and that othering, that separating out, when really the truth is there is no other. We are the same on a molecular level, on a like spiritual level. We are the same. We're made of the same things. We are all stardust and magic. Like that's what humans are made out of. So when you don't have empathy and compassion, you get division. And I feel like that is 100% where we are right now. And you have two halves separating, and you've got the compassion and the empathy over here. And then you have all the fucking crazy people over there. She says on the internet, so please don't write me letters. But write that, send them to Raven. But it's just crazy. And it all comes back to, for me, what you're talking about: empathy, connection, the individual understanding of empathy, right?
Yeah, and that reminds me a lot of various songs by Tori Amos, my empathic muse, my guide of my life, who the time of this recording, I got to be front row in Oakland, California 2 weeks ago.
Oh my God.
Oh, and we exchanged a wink and namaste hands, and I figured out how to get her a copy of my Empath's Oracle deck. And
That's amazing.
What a blessing. But
That's
she has
amazing.
so many of her songs focus on empathy, not overtly, but about the oneness and interconnection of us all.
I think people like that, artists like that, that speak to our hearts in certain ways. I feel like that's another form of empathy, because you're feeling what she's feeling, and she's amplifying what is in your heart, right? So that's this symbiotic relationship between the artists, whether it is music or visual art, that is expressive. It gives, as you said before, it gives a channel for that energy. And speaking of art, we have to take a break, but when we come back, we need to talk about your Oracle deck, because it is fucking beautiful. And I mean, like, artwork wise, it is fucking beautiful. But beyond that, your messaging is fucking amazing. And we have to take a break to hear from our amazing sponsors. But when we come back, yay, sponsors. Hooray. Can you believe it? As sponsors. When we come back, we are going to have more with Raven Digitalis and talk more about empathy. And this is a very healing conversation for me. So I'm very happy to be doing it. We will be right. It's great. We'll be right back with Raven and talking more. We are back with the amazing Raven Digitalis. I said it right that time, Digitalis. Apparently I was saying it wrong before, so thank you for correcting me. We're talking all about empathy, and we're talking about, how to manage empathy and where we find empathy, and how to shield ourselves from not so great energy and all of that stuff. And as I was saying right before the break, this has been a really great conversation for me, because I've been feeling all the feels and it's nice to hear, your take on these things as an empath. And if I'm going to be entirely honest with you, your Empath's Oracle deck, which thank you so much for having the publisher, Llewellyn, send me a deck to work with. I will be honest, and I will tell you, I haven't worked with it as much as I would like, because I only got it last week. But I have been playing around with it, and it is amazing. So first of all, for those of you who are watching the video, I'm going to hold these cards up so you can see them. That's the backs, but they are beyond beautiful. The artwork is insanely beautiful, which I think is, when you're working with an Oracle deck, that's so important, because you need to be grabbed by the imagery, right? So, but in addition to that, what strikes me the most when working with these cards is how linked to emotional health they are, and how it feels like these cards are giving me the emotional therapy I need to get through the day or a situation. So what brought you to creating this deck? And can you talk to us a little bit about the artwork and the imagery? Because it's very powerful artwork and imagery. And then of course with your words and your guidance, which is incredible.
I'm just honored. I'm floored about how beautifully they turned out. It's the whole package. It's just beyond anything I could have expected. And I give gratitude not only to Ganesha and the universe, but also to every person who worked so hard on putting it together at Llewellyn, and at printers, and then of course Constantine Bax, whose art is featured there. Now he's in Hamburg, Germany.
Amazing.
And it was just one of those things that was meant to be.
Can you see, like, just holding them up as you're talking?
Yeah, please do.
And my light is kind of reflecting off of them, but they're really just, so beautiful.
His work outstanding. And this is just, these cards are just a tip of the iceberg of his work. All of the cards are acrylic, hand painted, not digitally altered whatsoever.
What?
That is the trippy thing about it.
What? So these are so oftentimes with decks, they're digital. They're digital art. You're telling me that each one of these beautiful, amazing cards,
large acrylic paintings.
This is a large acrylic painting.
Yeah. It's unreal. I don't know how.
That's fucking insane.
I know.
Wow.
Talking to him on WhatsApp, I'm like, how do you do this? Like, how do you create this layer? He's like, oh, I've got all these tools. Sometimes I'll use like tea bags or scrapers or this or that. And he's like going through all these tools. I'm like, I can't even comprehend. It's incredible. Otherworldly. And all I did was got the vision for the deck. All 40 card titles came to me. And then I said, said to myself, okay, I'm gonna look up, I'm just gonna go online and look up modern abstract psychedelic artists. And he popped up in an article and I contacted him, and the next day he's like, I'm on board, let's do it. I've always wanted to do that. And he had so many paintings that were already silhouettes, and he only did 3 or 4 originals for the deck.
Are you serious?
Yeah, and they matched up just perfect with the cards' meanings. You know, the intentions that I had.
Incredible. That is incredible.
Just
it's like it's supposed to happen. It's like easy when something's supposed to happen, like you moving out to Kauai. It's easy and effortless. It's exactly the way it's supposed to be. That's fucking insane.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and Llewellyn accepted right away. They're like, yes, we'll do this. Okay, contract time. And yeah, worked out a good contract, a little advance. And look, even your child,
even Ollivander loves it. He loves it. Did you hear him screaming before? He's like singing the song of his people to let us know that he's still here. Yeah. And my microphone is really good, so it'll totally pick him up in the background, and my producer will have to edit it out. Sorry, Corey. No, okay, listen. These cards, first of all, the cards are fucking gorgeous. But let's talk about your writing here, because I'm going to be entirely honest with you. This is like the worst thing that a talk show host could say. I was not familiar with you until I was introduced to you by the Llewellyn PR team, right? Okay. And then I did all my research and I was like, oh my God, this guy's amazing. I need to have him on the show. You know, the way that you communicate the meanings and the deeper intentions behind these cards, I feel like you are talking to me. Like it feels like after every sentence you're going, Dawn. Like it really does. And I even like, here's the booklet that comes from the deck. And you could see I have cards in here that I pulled because they really, really spoke to me. The engaging with fears and doubts card. This was the first card I pulled from this deck. Okay. And I'm just playing around with it.
First, yeah.
Okay. I'm just playing around with it. And I'm like, well, let's just see what the deck has to tell me. And I pulled this and I was like, you got to be fucking kidding me. Come on. Like it's just, we must not be ashamed of the dark tides when they occur, because we are on a journey towards understanding our deepest selves. Self-forgiveness in the face of fear and emotional challenge is of the utmost importance in personal evolution. It is like I've never had an oracle deck be so poignant. Okay. I am not blowing smoke up your ass, Raven. Like I
know. I could sense it if you were.
I'm kind of blown away. And as I said, I wasn't that familiar with your work ahead of time. And I am completely enthralled with this deck. I can't wait to bring it to work. We have a meditation space at work, and we often do a group pull of cards. And I cannot wait to share this with them because it is so poignant. Here's another one that really spoke to me. Card number 26, sitting with sorrow. And I'm just going to read an excerpt. When exploring darker emotions, we must keep in mind, we are not our emotions. We are not our minds. We are not our bodies. These are individual pieces that make up a whole. You're fucking amazing. It's unlike anything else out there, and it's unlike anything else anyone else has done. And it's unlike any deck I've worked with to date.
Wonderful. I love hearing that.
And you need to really, really feel good about this and the work that you're doing and the help this provides, because the truth is your books are fantastic. When people read books, they're not always doing the exercises. They're not always practicing. Oh, I read this thing that I'm supposed to do, or this spell sounded really cool. And then they're going to read the next page and they forget all about it. This is something in a practical way people can do every single day to not only tap into their empathic selves, but also for that emotional healing. There's so much to ask you about this particular project because it's obviously such a labor of love, but is there a card within this deck that feels the most powerful and poignant for you personally?
Yes. So I devised it in such a way. I don't know if that's the right word. I do know English. I do.
Me speak good words.
Yeah, I speak good. I write better than I speak, I think. But I made it in such a way that when a person opens the deck, card number 1, first card they see is, I think, the most important: establishing emotional boundaries. And that's the only card of the deck. There it is. Only card in you also got that one. Okay, good. It's in your book. It's the only card that has a line down the middle of it. And I wanted that to be the first card that people see when they open it. And sure enough, it was. I didn't even ask for the deck to be oriented a certain way. I just had a feeling that if I made that card number 1, it would be the first one people would see. And sure enough, when you get the Oracle deck, you just open it up and you have a little ribbon. It pulls out the book, and then it pulls out the cards, and then that is the first one that you see. So it worked.
What is it about this card that is so important and significant to you as the creator of this deck?
Because I think that's the biggest empathic lesson. It's just establishing emotional boundaries. So what is mine versus what is not mine emotionally. And then everything else, the other cards from there explore almost the same concept in different ways. So that's like the big one. And then the rest of the cards are very significant also. It's just that's the first thing that I believe someone who's highly empathetic should focus on.
And that's also protection magic too, is being able to, and I like that so much because it takes it a step, for me anyway, because I do a lot of mental health stuff. It takes it a step further into the world of mental health, because you need good boundaries to survive mentally as well, right? Like, where to say no, where to say this is not okay, and where to say I need to push myself a little bit more. So fucking important. So conversely, is there a card or a message that was, in this deck that was uncomfortable for you or you struggled with, and why?
An interesting question. I never thought I'd get such a question. I'm gonna have to reference my own book now and look at
right, like was there something you got to and you were like, oh, this is challenging for me. This is really challenging
Um,
my beliefs, or this is really challenging how I feel about something, or
right,
this makes me uncomfortable and it's forcing me to look a little bit deeper at that boundary.
right. Let me see here. I'll just take a second to look through the titles of the cards to jog my bird brain memory.
No, it happens. I forget things that are in my book. I'm like, did I put that recipe in there? I don't remember.
Yeah. Well, let's see. You know what? It's not even a card. It's a concept. It's something more than that. So the art, it almost, well, every card has a silhouette or a face or multiple faces. Some of them are layered so you can barely see them. Just genius layers. And the thing is that I wanted to be sure that diversity was captured there, so that it's not just all white chicks or or white people, and that there are cards that are very could be considered queer easily, like an like non-binary or silhouettes that you can't tell if.
And now that you say that, I can see it. I can totally see it now that you say that. If I really examine them, I can say, okay, this is this face here has, he looks Asian, or this is a silhouette of someone who might be indigenous, or, and to be fair, the palette is like chakra palette. So it's all rainbows. So it's got a little bit of the, feels a little pridey. I mean, it's Pride Month, so everything feels pridey to me.
Yes, me too. Me too. I've got my pride flag on my car antenna. I noticed your bracelets.
My bracelets. But so that was a real challenge to be inclusive in that way.
Diversity, and so that's why Constantine and I were like, okay, we need to be sure that this deck in particular, because he has a large scope of work, very diverse, but this deck in particular needs to show not only ambiguous silhouettes, but also make sure to represent, a face that's clearly Asian, a face that's clearly Black, a face that's clearly male, a face that's clearly female, or one man, woman, whatever. Whatever's the PC words are these days. And then, just ambiguous, androgynous cards as well. Different ages of
that's so important.
Ages.
Yes.
And so we can, and the thing with that is that the reader can put themselves in that position of that person, no matter who they are, no matter which card they draw, so that they can immediately empathize with the card because they can see themselves in it.
Right.
So that was something we worked on perfecting, was getting the diverse representation in the cards as a total.
Imagine that would be challenging, specifically with this kind of art, but you nailed it. I mean, it's so beautiful. Like, what do you hope people who are using this Oracle deck get out of it?
Well, I hope to reach as many people as possible with it, for one. So far, I know Amazon sold out a couple of times. That was nice. And I sold out personally once, probably twice, when I get my new shipment. So it seems to be making its rounds pretty well already. So yeah, I just want to reach as many people as possible to help them. And then hopefully that can also be a bridge to my other books for them, and to just the greater realm of empathy and mystical, magical life in general. And these cards are not just for witches or pagans, and but my Esoteric Empathy book is, my Everyday Empath book is for everyone.
Yeah.
And so these oracle cards are also for everyone. And of course, being oracle cards, they're naturally mystical. So it's for the spiritually inclined. Yeah.
Right. I think that they really are. So much of your work on empathy, I know you've written on witchcraft specifically, but so much of your work on empathy, including these cards and your other books on empathy, they really are for everyone. I mean, like, I know plenty of people that are, of a Christian faith or whatever that could benefit from them, because empathy is human. And as we talked about before, empathy and compassion are important for human beings, regardless of what path you follow. It really is for everyone. Like, I would buy this for people. And I think it does appeal to so many different people. Anybody that has feelings, do you have feelings? You should use this deck. Like, do you have emotions? You should definitely use this deck. But that brings us to the next thing. Like, you have such a wealth of knowledge, and you have such an amazing background, and just your practice being for so many years and so educated in so many different things. What is next? What are you working on now? Because this deck came out fairly recently at the time of this recording, but this is going to be aired in, December or January. So what you have coming forward in the new year?
Well, when when viewers and listeners view and listen to our chat, my next book will have been released.
Yay!
So it's called A Witch's Shadow Magick Compendium. So this is a 15th anniversary revised, expanded, 3 times better version of my original Shadow Magick Compendium book from 2008. And so this is with Crossed Crow Press, with the Malloway brothers in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
They approached me. The rights for the text for that book and Gothcraft, which I will not reprint, that's a time capsule. The rights for Shadow Magic and various articles and things reverted back to me. And so, did a little spell prayer. And I said, okay, universe, I kind of don't want this to gather virtual dust. So if there's someone out there that can reproduce this, please send them my way. And then a month later, they're like, Raven, we want to work with you. And I'm like, we'll do it. Hell yeah.
Amazing. So what could people expect from that book in the new year? What can they expect from it? Because they're going to be in love with this deck, and then they're going to be like, they need to consume everything that you've created. Yeah. So what could they expect from that new edition?
A Witch's Shadow Magick Compendium. And that's the difference. That adds the word A Witch's Shadow Magick Compendium rather than just Shadow Magick Compendium.
Mm-hmm.
And with that book, it explores darkness within and without, and just various forms and manifestations of darkness and shadow. So
within ourselves and in the outer world, and then how to navigate them.
Right. So there's this chapter. First chapter is the inner shadow, internal shadow. Second chapter is the external shadow. There's the shadow of society, the shadow of nature, the shadow of death, shadow of society are different chapters that make it up. And
wow.
And of course, it's all for the greater good. We must, like two of the cards that you just presented specifically are about examining darkness and shadow and things like that, just for the purpose of healing, and which is one could say is shamanic in a way.
Yeah.
The going into darkness or internally or externally in order to heal, communicate with the deeper self,
and then heal others, because you get it, right? Like, so you're able to be like, okay, well, I'm going to do this shadow work such a term that gets thrown around in the community, shadow work, shadow work, shadow work. But if you're not actually doing the work and you're not actually looking at what's going on, and you're not, back to the beginning of this conversation, you're not being honest with yourself, you're not actually going to heal that. So you can't help other people if you don't take a good look and do the shadow work within yourself, and then be able to express that outwardly and help other people in the shadows that might be out in society, which again, like, so important, so important.
Yeah.
So Raven, let's say someone is like in love with you right now, like I am. And where do they find you online? How do they buy your wonderful books? And how do we follow you and stalk you online? I mean, I know already, but you should tell the people.
It's pretty easy to find me, Raven Digitalis. So it's Raven like the bird, and then Digitalis like foxglove plant, and just one word, lowercase, ravendigitalis.com. You can go there, and then Instagram.com/ravendigitalis, lowercase, one word, Facebook.com/ravendigitalis, ravendigitalis@gmail.com.
So you're everywhere.
Arrange readings with me. I do remote tarot readings. I work with the Goth deck. And now that this Empath's Oracle is published, I always conclude my full Thoth deck readings, which I've been doing tarot professionally for 16 years. And now I conclude the full readings with one card from my Empath's Oracle.
Excellent.
As to close a reading. But yeah, people can find me online that way, and then can order my books wherever books are sold. I sometimes have some on hand to autograph, but it just depends on the book, and it always varies.
Support your local bookstores. Walk right into your local bookshop and say, hey, I want to order stuff from author Raven Digitalis, and look it up, and they will get it for you, whatever you want, because local bookstores are the shit, and they can get you anything. And all of your information, all of your links and everything are going to be on our show notes. So anybody can go over to our show notes and click and click and click and be able to find you. Okay, Raven, are you ready for the last question? This is the signature question I ask every guest on the show. It has nothing to do with anything we talked about, so it's no pressure. It's just what I ask at the end of the day. So obviously I'm a kitchen witch. So if you were to have me cook you one magical meal, what would it be and why?
It would be sag paneer or palak paneer.
It's my favorite. Yes.
With extra ghee and maybe some chana masala. But yes.
But why?
India.
But why? Is that like your favorite? Is because India. Do you like it spicy?
Oh yeah, I'm a Leo, baby.
Yes. Yeah.
And a spicy Scorpio rising. You're a spicy Scorpio yourself.
So recently I have had problems with dairy. And sag paneer is like my favorite Indian dish. And I've been experimenting with vegan versions and using tofu instead of paneer itself. It's okay. It's not the same. It's not the same. If I was going to make it for you, I'd make it the real way.
Right.
I make it the real way. Oh, so I love that you picked that. I love that you picked that. Do you make your own?
My former priestess, she would make her own. But I honestly don't like cooking. I'm just, it's not my thing.
That's okay.
I don't like to cook.
That's okay. And just so you know, kitchen witchery wise, sag paneer is prosperity spell. So it is. Spinach is a leafy green, and that's cash, baby. Money, money, money. And dairy is joyful energy, right? So it's nurturing and joy and nurturing. So if you're making, even if you're just eating it, like to infuse it with your intention for prosperity like quick cash. Spinach and that kind of thing is really great for quick cash spell. So it's really good for abundance and prosperity. And yep.
Oh, true.
Yep. And then the rice, if you're serving it over rice is also a prosperous food. So it's everything about Saag Paneer is prosperity and nurturing prosperity and bringing in abundance.
Lovely. Oh, I would have never even thought about that. Yep. So true, isn't it? And I would also add that the source of the milk is very important, because we want it to come from happy cows.
Yes.
Because if it doesn't, then it adds distress.
Yes.
To energy to the dish.
Absolutely. When we talk about kitchen magic and food magic, it is a privilege to be able to buy organic food or locally sourced. It really is a privilege to be able to do that. And I've been in positions where I wasn't able to, but you do what you can when you can. And look for a humane stamp or buy your milk locally. Like, there's a farm up the road. I could see the cows, so if you're going to eat meat, buy it locally where your farmer and you see how those animals are treated. So there's no question. But 100% you have to be mindful about where your food comes from, especially when it comes to animal products. Now I want a big bowl of Saag Paneer. So thanks for that.
My stomach is grumbling.
Crowley.
Feed me, Seymour.
Oh my God. I love that you just made a Broadway show reference.
I bet you can with that New York voice. It's the character.
You mean
Audrey?
It's an Audrey too.
Yeah, Audrey too.
This is my boyfriend, Oren Scrivello, DDS. Okay. Do you want me to do the whole show? Because I will. All right. Silently Seymour. No, we'll just do it. It'll be a thing. Raven Digitalis, thank you so much for coming. You are so wonderful. This was lovely. Thank you for scheduling. I hope you had fun.
Very much.
And this was wonderful. So thank you so much for being here. It was
an
absolute pleasure. And until next time, I wish you many, many blessings and so much gratitude. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
You too. Blessed be.
Blessed
Namaste.
be.